and we parked the lies in Lot C. Parking garages make liars of honest men. My name is Ezra. I manage operations for Cityport, a downtown tangle of garages and pay stations and radio channels that believe in themselves. The man I loved was Marco, a sous chef whose hands could persuade butter to confess. We rented a studio above a tire shop that smelled like arguments and hot rubber and the closest thing to church I've ever known. We kept 3 rules on the inside of a cabinet door. Be home when you say. Don't rehearse breakups. Kiss before sleep. We did not write anything about tenants who pay in favors, influencers who park their conscience in disabled spaces, or cameras that never catch the moment you think deserves to be famous. On paper, my job is simple: keep the cars moving and the arrows honest. In reality, it's weather with receipts. Lot A is for the courthouse and the men who believe their suits will absolve them. Lot B is for retail and the teenagers who think the second floor is a personality. Lot C is for the stadium and anything that wants to be a secret. I know every oil stain in Lot C. I can tell you which space a breakup prefers and which corner looks kind at noon but teaches lessons after dark. We met during a power failure, which is a genre all its own. The storm hit during a matinee, 2,000 people in jerseys, and a city that thought it was the main character. The lights died for 3 seconds, then for a breath that counted as peril. Generators rolled in slow like promises. Marco and I were already together then. He ran down from the restaurant where he had just finished dressing a dessert in a way that made customers tip the server for lighting. He came to Lot C because he knows my face when I am trying not to be afraid. We found each other by the cashier's office where the emergency lights paint everyone as sinners. He kissed me behind the plexiglass and said, "I like you better in outages," which is either romance or blasphemy. Maybe both. Jace appeared a year later as a new tenant with a developer's grin and a car that believed it was a yacht. He ran the Silo, a nightclub wedged into a warehouse that used to store wheat and now stored people auditioning for other people's phones. He needed 40 passes in Lot C for his VIPs, and a promise that none of them would ever feel like the public. "We want discretion with dignity," he said, which is exactly what the city thinks it can sell. I gave him 30 passes and a lecture on access. He smiled like he was grading me and said, "You do a lot with lines." My counterpart in enforcement was a man named Tyler with a shaved head and a permanent squint learned from sun and skepticism. He patrolled Lot C like a pastor, everyone a congregant, everyone a possible donor, everyone guilty of something. He and I were friends because men who count signs and minutes share a belief in consequences. He didn't like Jace's people. They didn't like rules. On a Friday, I watched him ask a man in a camel coat not to block the Ada lane. The man said, "I'm only 5 minutes." Tyler said, "That's when hearts fail," and the man did the universal math of losing an argument to someone whose job is mercy and moved his car. Marco met Jace at twilight over a plate of oysters that had been taught moderation. Jace stopped by the restaurant early and sat at the bar in the way people do when they're shopping for a new habit. "You're Ezra," he said to Marco, like I was a garage. Marco said, without smiling, "I belong to Rent and Sugar," which is how he refuses soft power, with sweetness that doesn't fracture. Jace laughed like he'd found a constraint that could be negotiated. Later, when Marco told me, he did it while his hands kept chopping parsley, which I consider a kindness. If there's a knife between us, let it be busy. Intrigue performs best where fluorescent lighting can pretend to be moonlight. Lot C has a corner that looks like confession when the late shift ends. Jace found it faster than I wanted him to. One night he sent a text, "Need you to smooth something in C, quick." I went prepared to be irritated. The quick thing was a Sprinter van idling in a no-stop zone while a famous person practiced clandestine. I told the driver to move. The driver told me to relax. Jace put a hand on my arm like cigarettes used to and said, "Let me handle this." He walked to the window and said a sentence in a soft tone that made Money remember it is made of paper. The van moved. "You like running the room," he said to me in the quiet after. "I like running the rules," I said. "Same sentence," he grinned. "Different verbs." He kissed me 2 weeks later behind the elevator bank, efficient as a tap of a pass. It was curious, then insistent, then persuasive. His mouth tasted like a cocktail that had been named after an apology. I kissed back because curiosity is a hall pass and persuasion is a major. We stopped because Tyler's radio crackled, and the loud part of our conscience still belongs to men who wear reflective vests. Jace straightened my collar the way people straighten facts. "If you ever want privacy with a skyline," he said, "my roof rehearses it." I told Marco the next morning while he plated breakfast with my favorite spoon, which is his way of announcing mercy. "Do you want him?" he asked in the tone paramedics use for blood pressure. "I want to be the kind of person he thinks can be bought and then not be," I said. He didn't flinch. "Don't make me guess," he said, and then he put his hand on my throat lightly, the way some men prove they mean it. The other man was Tomas, who parks with his handbrake like he's ashamed of gravity. He works security at the stadium and writes essays about the city on a blog 6 people read and 1 screenwriter steals. He has a smile that reads like a full stop and forearms my daydreams owe money too. He pays his monthly pass on time. He also lingers at the cashier's station to watch the clerks count integrity. One Saturday afternoon when the city was practicing humidity, he leaned through my office door and asked if I had any power over the broken card reader on the east gate. "I have power over how long people think it will be broken," I said. He grinned. "That's the same thing." We stood too close by the parts shelf between traffic cones and a gallon of industrial cleaner that smelled like hope. He touched my wrist like he was checking a pulse he'd been flirting with. We kissed once. It was friendly and dangerous. It tasted like summer and the audit of mistakes I hadn't filed yet. If there is anything to recommend me, it's that I tell the truth when it's inconvenient. I told Marco about Tomas and we argued on the scale of vowels because words felt too expensive. We did not throw things. We did not invent history. He stood at the sink, water running, and wiped his hands the way men do when they're trying not to touch the thing that will hurt them. "Are we open?" he asked. "No," I said. "We're interrupted." He turned the water off and kissed me with a competence that made me bored again on purpose. "Choose the room you want to belong to," he said into my mouth, "not the men visiting." The scandal we didn't deserve arrived via Lot C, because Lot C believes itself an oracle. A camera caught the Sprinter van's famous person exchanging something unphotographable for something regrettable with a legislator whose smile had recently tortured our bill to raise downtown loading fees. The blog that eats our city for content posted it with a caption that confused discretion with conspiracy. Jace texted me a screenshot and then called. "You have to lose that file," he said, tense in a way Money is. I said, "We don't delete cameras, we follow policies." He said, "Policy is a costume." I said, "So is influence." He swore impressive vowels and then laughed because he likes people who refuse him. "You're playing a longer game than me," he said. I hung up and called our legal counsel. Tyler leaned in the doorway and watched me behave like the type of man I like being. The next day, a deputy commissioner called to ask how long we keep footage and whether the mayor's office could assist our compliance. I told them the retention schedule like I was reading vows. That night, Marco and I lay in bed not touching because sometimes love performs border control. He said, "You can tell Jace you want his roof and still keep this apartment." I said, "I'm a manager. I have to choose which line to stand in." He put his hand over my eyes and said, "You have to choose whose eyes you'll have to meet in the morning." I kissed his wrist and tried to sleep enough to trust myself. Tomas kissed me behind a column on level 3 while a thunderstorm rehearsed an alibi. He tasted like rain and sincerity. "I'm not interested in being your break," he said. "I'd like to be your maintenance." I laughed in relief and humiliation. "You read my blog," he said, surprised. "I manage a lot," I said, and he smiled with his whole mouth. "Then manage me. Take me to coffee in daylight or don't touch me in garages." I took him to coffee. We didn't talk about kisses. We talked about torque and neighborhoods, and how people park their fear inside strangers. I didn't kiss him again, which is a sentence that's harder to earn than to write. The footage subpoena arrived like a test without a study group. Legal sent me to the witness room with instructions and a pressed shirt. The legislator's office called it a witch hunt. The famous person's publicist called it performance art. Jace called me twice and I let it ring twice. Then 3 times. My chest auditioned panic and got a call back. Marco texted. Dinner after, I wrote, count on it. He replied, counting. We rolled the footage for the assistant DA and 2 people who looked like they had been born already tired. I narrated without editorial. The Sprinter van admitted to staging. The legislator admitted to being human. The camera stayed boring, which is the only way machines become trustworthy. After the Ada asked me if I could identify the other man in the corner, the blur that might have been Tomas the day I kissed him. My throat remembered how not to be a cop. "No," I said. It was true. The camera forgives certain distances. Tristan, no, not Tristan, wrong story, wrong city. It was Victor, predictably. "After this blows over," he said, "we're spinning an activation for Lot C, safety meets lifestyle." I deleted the email. Jay sent a text, "Roof tonight, no conversations, just view." I didn't answer. I went home at 6 for the first time in a month and burned dinner on purpose so we could laugh about something that wasn't a precedent. "How, Lot C?" Marco asked. "Teaching me ethics," I said. He kissed me with his hand at my throat like he approves of my sentences. We took each other to bed and performed the miracle of boredom. I moved our rules from inside the cabinet to the front of the fridge because certain rooms deserve signage. We added a 4th. Don't treat secrets like vehicles. That sounds like a joke until it saves you. Jace sent fewer texts. Tomas sent a link to a piece he'd written about streetlights and desire. It was not subtle. It was good. I wrote back a heart and a period. Tyler got promoted to operations for the North Lots because competence occasionally wins. The legislator resigned with a statement that made Grammer look guilty. The famous person apologized by monetizing their confession. Victor hosted an event called Park and Sip that 1,000 people attended and only 3 remembered. We put new paint on the Ada lanes. Sometimes I go stand at the corner of level 4, near the sign that lies about capacity. I watch the city throw its weight around down there and I feel my chest behave. It's not serenity, it's management. I let my mind replay kisses like CCTV, grainy, timed, factual. I let intrigue pull into a space and I wave it on. Then I go home, up the 2 flights that smell like rubber and postcards, and I find Marco reading with his boots off and his usefulness stored for morning. I put my palm on his chest because counting is how I write vows. "Here," he asks, smiling because certain questions answer themselves. "Yes," I say, and the lies we parked in Lot C evaporate the way rain does after a decision you choose not to write down. If anyone asks how to live in a city that auditions you daily for your worst self, I tell them the only trick I've learned. Use the cameras for policy, not for longing. Change the passwords that let people in the wrong way. Put the rules where you can see them. Be home when you say, kiss before sleep. And when a beautiful man offers you a roof, remember roofs leak. The view isn't the room. Choose the room. Lot C will forgive you. It always does. But the body you take upstairs is the only witness that matters.